the job didn't give me what I was looking for. And it's in those moments when I realized, I'm like, wow, I've hit all the things in my life that I'm supposed to have hit. I'm still not happy. And that's when my relationship changed to money, to say, like, well, maybe money actually isn't it. Maybe my job really actually isn't it. There's actually there's something else here that I need to go find out about what life is about, because the things that I was raised thinking and the things that society had taught me aren't real. And I got to go find out what that is for myself.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Scott Smith, who's going to teach us how to protect our assets, because not losing is winning. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life, to wake up energized, excited about the day, to have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want, to be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. While you're there, you can sign up for a monthly email where I share the best articles I read this month, let you know about upcoming episodes, and share a little wisdom. You can also listen to coaching calls under the Coaching Calls tab. I also share the most interesting articles I read every week on Facebook at facebook.com/Richer Soul. And there's also a Facebook group where you can ask questions and interact with other listeners. Today's quote comes from Jim Quick. If an egg is broken by outside force, life ends. If broken by inside force, life begins. Great things always begin from inside. I always say the answers are within you, but we need to spend the time to be quiet and listen and search for them. That's a big part of what I've been doing these past few months, digging deeper into me. I've also been working on improving my systems, removing distractions. One of the ways I do that is through the theme of last week's action step, which was to try the appreciation exercise. As Tony Robbins says, when you switch expectations to appreciation, your world changes. The inner peace gives you the space to live the life of your dreams. So, are you doing your inner work to improve? Next week's episode is going to dig deeper into that, and it also shows that your past does not determine your future. I know these can be trying times, and depending on where you live, the rules are all pretty different. We're going to see lasting change come to the world. I hope you are well. I don't know what it's going to look like, but we all have the ability to pivot, look within, and find the new way to go forward. I started my new podcast. It's for small business owners and real estate investors. It's called The Profit Answer Man. Check it out if you're a small business owner or invest or have a real estate business. Our guest today also had a similar journey to mine. He built wealth and found out money doesn't ensure happiness. We're going to talk about that, and we're also going to talk about asset protection. We need to make sure we protect our real estate, wealth, and business. And Scott Smith has some great ideas on how to free your time, protect your assets, and create lasting wealth with asset protection. He's an attorney and longtime real estate investor. When a close friend of his lost over $3 million in a single lawsuit, Scott decided to leave his litigation practice to help people protect themselves from frivolous lawsuits. His firm, Royal Legal Solutions, now helps thousands of real estate investors and entrepreneurs protect more than $1.2 billion in assets. Listen in as he deconstructs the lawsuit game and shows you how to protect yourself and your hard-earned wealth. Let's meet our guest. Welcome to Richer Souls, Scott Smith. It's great to have you join us today.
Yeah, real pleasure to be here, Rocky. I'm really excited to be able to share you guys with the great things that we've been doing to help small business owners and people that are looking to achieve financial freedom and build their net worth. I've been doing it for over 6 years now as a law firm, and I'm an open book. So anything we want to know about, my goals are always to just share all the secrets, all the information with everybody, anything I know. So we can dive as deep or as shallow as we want today.
Cool. And I think we'll go through a variety of topics and see how you can help us. And I've got a bunch of questions and I'm excited to learn. We always start at the beginning, though. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Yeah, so I actually grew up with a single mother. My father passed away when I was 3, and all my brothers and sisters, I'm one of 4. I'm the youngest, and my eldest brother's 18 years older than me. So they're all grown. So it was just me and my other brother there with my mom, and she is a school teacher. So we weren't like poor by any stretch of the imagination. We were always provided for everything we needed, but we didn't really have money. But we knew money was important to mom, and that mom respected people that had money. And we also were raised with like this kind of thing about like people that were educated were also respected. So we all end up getting advanced degrees. And now me and my brother are both entrepreneurs. My sister actually has a nonprofit called Brain Friendly Reading that she does to help dyslexic kids in Detroit, where they're revolutionizing the way that these young children are reading. Actually, they just got called out by the district there for cheating on the exams because the test improvements were actually too good for the benchmarks. But the issues around like money that came into this is that I always thought, once you got educated and you had the money, that also meant that you were like respected and loved. I had always linked those two things together, and what a surprise for me that that's not how that works. So money has always been an interesting piece for me, where my relationship to it has really changed over time. Initially being that kind of false conception, and now realizing that money for me really is, hitting, am I provided for to be able to have financial freedom? And then after that, money just looks to me, it's like almost just like stored energy. It's like ways I can direct energy to go create things to help people. And that's my overarching purpose in life. Because I don't have to work anymore. But now, I have a firm with 30 people that work all over the country, and we help, thousands of clients with their real estate and growing their net worth and achieving financial freedom. And that when you focus on deep problems and really helping people, you create more money that you can then reinvest into helping more people. And it's really great.
It sounds like we've had a very similar journey. Was there a turning point that you changed your relationship with money, or did it just kind of happen over time?
Well, it happened with the disillusionment of becoming an attorney. I think I went to law school seeking, that type of like validation that like I'm smart enough, I'm respected, whatever those things are, that we're seeking as human beings. And I got through law school, and then I was a really successful litigator. I was suing insurance companies. Come to find out, insurance companies are just like any other type of corporation that was looking for profits. They're just in the business of collecting premiums and denying coverage, and we would sue them when they would inappropriately deny coverage. And I was really good at it. But none of those things, the money that I made from that and the job, didn't give me what I was looking for. And it's in those moments when I realized, I'm like, wow, I've hit all the things in my life that I'm supposed to have hit, and I'm still not happy. And that's when my relationship changed to money, to say like, well, maybe money actually isn't it. Maybe my job really actually isn't it. There's actually there's something else here that I need to go find out about what life is about, because the things that I was raised thinking and the things that society had taught me aren't real. And I got to go find out what that is for myself.
Was there a particular resource or event or something that really helped you in that shift?
Well, I think it was more of a process of disillusionment, really. I couldn't really point out to any one particular thing. Besides, I can really distinctly remembering like making more money than I've ever made through my real estate investing, while I was being an attorney. And eventually, I left legal practice because I was actually making more money in real estate than I was being an attorney and really not caring. Like I can distinctly remember that moment of like getting all this money in from like these checks and then being like, great.
Now what, right? You got rich. Now what?
Yeah. And now it's just like, there's a big, just so what at the end of it,
So now though, you don't feel that way anymore. I don't mean about the money, but I mean about your life. You feel much more purposeful.
Well,
or do you still struggle with it?
No. I don't feel that way anymore. I have a really clear purpose and intentionality, and it's around growing things and creating things with other people that I care about inside of my company, and then serving other people to play the game of how drastically can I improve somebody's life and how quickly can I do it, and how much smarter can I be than other people that are trying to do the same thing that's really, really hard. And that's really fun. It's a fun game to play, and it builds community and connection. And at the end of the day, you get to see the impact of a client, be like, I can't even believe this exists, and that's really cool.
And that it is very cool. So let's actually start with one of the things that you started with, which you said you were suing insurance companies because they were denying claims. And I think a lot of people think, well, I have insurance, so I'm covered. And on top of that, you get an umbrella policy, and they tell you to get an umbrella policy to essentially cover your net worth, and they think they're good and there's no other risk. Is that true?
Insurance policies are always your best first line of defense. It's how you're going to get the most bang for your buck in terms of defense, because insurance policies, liability and umbrella policies, all the insurance policies, right? How much protection you get for how much money you pay, can't beat that. So I'm always a huge advocate saying we should always be very well insured, right? Because we want insurance companies to step up and pay those claims. The thing is, though, is that like that only gets you part of the way there. So insurance companies, first of all, you have to understand, are profit-seeking corporations, and they're in the business of collecting premiums and denying coverage. Their goal really isn't to protect you. The goal is only to fulfill their contractual obligations and increase their profitability so they can pay out to their shareholders. That's really the game that they're playing. So how do we use insurance companies appropriately? Is that we always use their services, but we don't rely on them to protect us, especially not to protect all of our entire net worth. What a lot of people don't understand about insurance, and what my friend didn't understand about insurance, is he lost over $3 million in real estate from a single lawsuit. And he was very well insured, and he had all the assets in his personal name, which he didn't understand is the absolute worst way that you can hold assets. I'm talking like cash, stocks, real estate, everything. And even though he had the great insurances in place, what he didn't understand is that insurance only covers you against one type of claim called negligence. Those are just simple accidents. He didn't realize that like anything that he had signed contracts on, any emails that he had sent, text messages he had sent, phone conversations that he had, all of those things gave liability for somebody saying like, hey, you misled me, which is totally in their discretion to say that they misled you, no matter how honest you are or not. It doesn't matter. It's all their subjective opinion, whether that you misled them or not. And insurance policies never cover like breach of contract issues. So there's a whole host of claims. In fact, hundreds of different types of claims that people could sue for based upon the interactions that you're just having them in the day-to-day life, that insurance doesn't cover, because insurance only covers one type of claim, which is negligence, meaning just simple accidents, like somebody just slips and falls on your property. But just to even highlight this a little bit more, is that insurance companies are a little shady. And I think we all know they're a little shady. Like anytime a major catastrophe comes in, like hurricanes or whatever, what's the first thing they do is they just blanketly deny coverage, right? Leaving everybody inside of lawsuits, having to sue the insurance companies to make them pay. Right. So this happens to individuals, and has happened to a few of my clients even. where there's a valid claim that comes through the insurance company should pay out. But it turns out to be really expensive. Like, it's like grandma falling through the staircase, right? Now she's permanently disabled, has all these hospital bills, it's really, really catastrophic accident, right? Well, the insurance company sees the big bill, and what they say is that this isn't negligence that we would cover. This is gross negligence, just meaning this is an accident that you should have known was going to happen. I don't even know how you could have known an accident is going to happen, but that's what they say. And there's a legal caveat that they get to decide on their own will that allows them to deny coverage. So at this whole time, this whole game has shifted where they actually have all of the control. At any moment, they can decide to turn against you, leaving you to have to fight off, major claims. And the thing that I advocate is to say, well, let's not leave ourselves in that position. Let's take those small extra steps that we can easily do and affordably do to make sure that even if the insurance company decides that they want to screw with us, that we're going to be totally fine, that our net worth is protected, and that we're going to lose little to nothing.
So let's talk about how we do that, because you mentioned real estate and you also mentioned cash. And I think people they don't think about their personal real estate. They probably think more about rental real estate or that type of thing and putting it into a corporation to create a certain level of protection. So how do we do that with the rest of our assets, and what would you recommend?
Yeah, so what you have to first think about is that rich people don't own things and they don't pay taxes. My advocacy is always to say, let's act like rich people. So rich people, like, for example, they don't own a yacht. They have an LLC, which owns that yacht, and they just control the yacht, right? It's the difference between separating ownership and control. And when you do that, what it means is that you become what's called judgment proof, or you become bulletproof to litigation. So that people can sue you all day long and they can't hurt you, right? They can't get to any of your stuff. So what that would look like is that, typically what we're looking at is creating is either a trust structure called the Delaware Statutory Trust, or we're looking at creating a series LLC, and then using that type of asset holding company that's created anonymously through a law firm, so nobody can even find out that you own it. And then we move the assets, whether it's cash, stocks, your personal residence, investment properties, whatever the case may be, all of that gets moved into the asset holding company where all the assets are held anonymously. So it looks like if anybody ever looks to sue you, that it looks like you qualify for food stamps. And that's how we stop lawsuits before they ever start, because it looks like you own nothing. And if they do try to come after it, it's protected in this very, very strong structure.
And so how does that affect how you pay taxes?
No, all of these are treated as disregarded entities for tax purposes. So nothing actually changes in the way that you report your taxes. You can also run everything out of a single bank account, as long as you have inside of your accounting records, you classify the income and expenses for each individual property that you would have. And the way that we're able to do that is using the functionality of these two types of structures that are special and they're unique to the Delaware Statutory Trust and the Series LLC, where you can do something that you can't do in any other type of entity, which is you can create just one entity that you file with the state, and that creates the trust structure or the Series LLC structure. And then what you're able to do is create what's called a child series of that parent entity. So the parent entity is filed with the state. That parent entity can turn around and create on its own, without any additional filings with the state and no additional filing fees and no additional yearly reporting, an individual child series. Now that child series acts like its own entity for liability purposes. It's also anonymous. So what does that mean? That means you get to pay for one company. You only have to maintain one company. You only have one bank account, one EIN number, one tax reporting that ends up going through that entity. But you get an unlimited and infinite number of these child series entities, which can compartmentalize every single asset for free. So that way, if you ever have a lawsuit against one asset, they can't go after any of the other assets and they can't go after you.
And that's important, because I know if you own multiple houses, and I think a lot of real estate people talk about that, each one in its own corporation, its own LLC, so that, as you said, if one house gets sued, it doesn't affect the other 6, 7, or 8 houses that are out there. So people are going to ask, though, how much does it cost to A, set this up, and then B, on an ongoing basis, is there additional costs because now you have to do more complicated tax returns or something?
Yeah, so on the tax return piece, right, that's what I was referencing with saying that's a disregarded entity, that all of your taxes will actually stay exactly the same way they are right now, right? So with all the tax advantages that you have, whatever the tax schema that you're working under, what we do plugs in seamlessly with that, so that there's no additional tax preparation fees that you have to pay to your CPA, and there's no disadvantageous tax treatment. When it comes into operationally, speaking of like what does it take to set this kind of stuff up, there is a lot of work that has to go into the front end, right, of kind of building the castle. But then after the castle is built, it just kind of runs in the background of your life. There's nothing extra that you have to do each year. What makes Royal Legal really unique is that what we do is a full service firm. I mean, we handle everything from the asset protection to the estate planning to tax strategy, et cetera. So we actually quarterback all of the different areas that impact a real estate investor's life, and we bring that all in-house. It's kind of homegrown from my own experience from being an attorney and then turned real estate investor and then just helping people do what I did essentially over the last 6 years, and I've done it a few thousand times with different types of real estate investors and business owners all across the United States. In terms of cost, I'm always looking to keep my costs in line but have the absolute highest value in the market, right? There's a few people that can do what I do, and what Royal Legal Solutions does, and what we do as a team with 30 of us here. And I'm always making sure that I'm doing more stuff, incorporating more aspects of my clients' lives, and offering a better price on it. And that's how we are able to stay as being the highest value. In most circumstances that we run into, these things, are going to be in the 4-figure range, right? To go from I don't have anything and I'm just naked out here in the wild owning everything in my personal name, and I don't have my estate planning and my other things, to being able to get fully protected and to be backed by somebody that's taking care of everything for you, advising you on an ongoing basis, being proactive with your tax strategy and your asset protection strategy and your business strategy. And that's a 4-figure setup cost, and typically a low maintenance cost to go along with that.
Okay. And so the maintenance is for what purposes, though?
Yeah. So, what we find is that there's a couple of things. Is that, like, whenever you establish these entities, there's a part of us that says that, like, of all the filings that have to happen each year just to be able to fully maintain the entities, right? So on the LLC piece, you would think of this in terms of, like, what are going to be your minutes, registered agent, any type of public information disclosure documents that have to get filed, and how do you keep those anonymous? There's just a number of things in there that you typically need to maintain at a bare minimum. Where we go above that, though, is by offering people, every member of Royal Legal Solutions gets a biannual review. So twice a year, you'll sit down with your dedicated advisor and you go over, all of the important things. Because honestly, we don't trust you to do anything right? So we make you sit down with us twice a year to think through, okay, well, how have you been operating your business? Okay, how have you been operating your companies? Let's make sure that you haven't done anything that's wrong there that we need to go clean up. Okay, what's changed? So we can look at proactively what are the tax strategies you need to be looking at. Probably not getting that right now from your CPA and other advisors. So we want to make sure that we touch base with you on that. Has anything changed with your family? Maybe we need to update your estate plan in some way. So let's go ahead and circle in on that. We also give unlimited access and support at no additional cost for all of our clients, because we want to be the authoritative resource for you on any questions that you have, to say, just come to us and we'll answer it for you. We're not going to charge you anything extra for that. There's no barrier to talk to somebody who's knowledgeable, and all of our people are all supported by the attorney staff and by me for any questions that they don't know. As you can imagine, for doing this over the last 6 years, 99% of questions are things that we've had to handle before and that we have our written documents documentation and FAQ to answer those questions. And then all of our members too also get access to all of our different coaching programs that we have for how to invest in syndications, how to think through tax strategy, all of the podcasting, special live access to any of the podcasting that we do. And the really crown jewel of what we do into it in terms of a membership is something that no other firm could or would do, is that if you're ever sued, that we stand behind all of our structures to the extent that we'll be part of your legal defense at no additional cost. So you'll likely have to have local counsel to be able to represent you there in court, because I don't have attorneys in every single state, but we're part of your legal team to make sure that you have the best possible litigation strategy and protection right from the very beginning of that lawsuit. So it's really a 360 degree, top to bottom, type of service that you're able to get access to for under $100 a month.
Interesting. So what happens with, let's say, like a brokerage account? Do you just title it differently? Is that what it is?
Yeah, bank accounts, brokerage accounts, all that just gets titled into the name of your asset holding company. So if you think about this, you should have at least two companies. You need one asset holding company. That's an anonymous entity. You want that to have a series structure so you can compartmentalize any assets underneath it. But inside of the parent company, you can hold, your cash, you retitle your brokerage account in there. If you have a limited partnership interest in other companies, you can push those into that company as well too. So that asset holding company essentially owns everything. It can actually even hold your business assets. So like your website, your IP, if you own vans, whatever your business, whatever you consider your business assets to be, can all be held inside of that asset holding company. And then the asset holding company, then, if those assets are being, let's say, like used by your business essentially just leases that asset back from your asset holding company, right? Because you don't want your business to own any assets. Similarly, you want to personally always be acting through an LLC that doesn't own anything. So your asset holding company will hold all of your assets, right? But then how do you do business? Well, your business, you need to conduct business always through a completely separate LLC, which doesn't own anything at all. That should be your active business if you're a small business owner. Also for like hiring contractors, collecting rents, and performing those functions on behalf of real estate, those should also be through an LLC, which doesn't own anything, because you shouldn't be doing anything anymore. You as an individual shouldn't do anything anymore, because even if you don't own anything and everything that you own is actually protected in an asset holding company, you still have a credit score. So you need a shield from you to the rest of the world that prevents people from being able to hurt your credit score, because ultimately that's going to either impact your business or your ability to invest.
And so I'm not sure I understand the credit score issue that you brought up.
Well, if you're sued, Ricky, and even if you get into that lawsuit, and you have a judgment reported against you, even if you don't have to pay out that judgment, or you don't pay out that judgment, the judgment actually impacts your credit score.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's what you were referring to.
Yeah, because what you want to be able to put yourself in a position is if people sue you and you don't care, you say, fine, go grab the judgment, because the judgment is against an LLC that doesn't own anything, right? That's how you have your strongest position in the negotiation. Because most of these lawsuits, right, they usually end in a settlement, just so that we can get them disposed of. But I always want to be in the position that I have the maximum leverage and strength, because that's how you get the best settlement figure. And some of my clients say they don't want to settle. And if we don't, then I want to go and have all the bullets in the chamber ready to fire.
So if your personal credit score goes down, how are people able to borrow at that point? Or the business borrows? You can't. Okay. All right. That's what I thought. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's why it's protecting your credit is so imperative, First we look at protecting all of the assets and protecting the money, right? Then we look at saying, okay, well, now we need to shelter your personal protection because we need you to protect your credit score, because until you get to pretty major status with your business, almost everything is tied. They look at you as part of the underwriting process, which means they look at your credit score.
Okay. And so one of the things that I've heard, and it sounds like this solves that problem, is if you create, especially, and this is more so for very small businesses. So in other words, you're a solo attorney, or you're like me, I'm a coach, or a solo accountant. Even if you create an LLC and you work in your LLC, more than likely, if a lawsuit comes, because you're the one doing the work, they sue the company and they sue you personally. But it sounds like in this case, even if they sue the company and you personally, you don't have any assets. So you essentially are protected from that issue.
That's right. Yeah. So the first thing you do is that you have all of your assets in that anonymous asset holding company. So if that lawsuit comes, right, there's no payout for them, right? So then the business of the lawsuit from their perspective doesn't make sense anymore. Right. So that's our first line of defense is one, it doesn't look like you own anything. If they do somehow find out that you do own things, right, then it's like, well, actually, I don't, because it's inside of this anonymous asset holding company. You're never going to be able to touch that because your lawsuit is against me personally and this other entity. It's not against my asset holding company. So you're not going to be able to get to it. So now what's their incentive to sue? It's pretty low, right? And then we get to go through saying, well, because you opened up an LLC and you're operating through your LLC and you had the proper legal support to ensure that you were doing that correctly, then what you're able to do is present those very strong arguments in court to be able to get yourself personally dismissed from the lawsuit. So that way you actually get yourself removed. You can't stop people from naming just whoever they want to in a lawsuit. They can name whoever, right? I mean, they can name Santa Claus, right? But if I'm Santa Claus's attorney when they're coming after whatever, the first thing I'm doing is say, hey, Santa Claus is not a viable party to this lawsuit, and here's how, we're getting him dismissed. That's it, right? And you can do that as long as you've done the proactive steps correctly. Have a very high success rate with doing that, because that's the bedrock of LLC structures, is to be able to create separation between the individual and the business. And the reason that we have these LLCs and why it's important to form your LLCs, in states that have strong charging order protection, is so that you have that out, that you use the legal leverage correctly and you've done the maintenance correctly. So that way, when you get there, you can pull that trigger.
So the one thing is creating LLCs, but this is actually a trust, correct?
Yeah. So I mentioned two different types of asset holding companies.
Okay.
One type of asset holding company is called a Delaware Statutory Trust. It's arguably the strongest asset holding company, type of asset holding company you can get in the country. It also offers series protection. It's really great for people that want to avoid franchise taxes and want to avoid state registration costs, both like in their domestic state as well as any other foreign states, because trust structures aren't required to register as foreign entities. Only LLCs are. The other type of structure is what's known as a series LLC, and it has a little bit lower price point to be able to put it together. Usually, saving about $1,000, $2,000 with going a series LLC route. But you end up with, other things, right? Because it's an LLC structure, all of a sudden, there's other things that you're going to end up having to pay that are going to cost you more on an ongoing basis, right? So that's kind of the duality between those two structures. Of the two, my preference is always to go with the Delaware Statutory Trust, because my opinion is that it's stronger and it helps us avoid some ongoing costs. So when I'm thinking long term, I'm always thinking, what are my ongoing costs, right? I can pay whatever in the front end typically for my own investment strategies, but my goals are always to say, how can I increase my net income that comes in passive to me every year, which means I need to decrease my yearly expenses.
And that's always important, right? The gap between what comes in and what goes out, and cutting expenses is a big part of that. So who actually, when you create this trust, you don't actually own the trust, is that correct? Or you do own the trust?
Trust ownership is a weird concept, because really, like, almost nobody really owns a trust, right? If you want to get in terms of how we typically think about trust structures. But trusts break down into three parts. You have a grantor, you have a trustee, and you have a beneficiary. The grantor is the person that creates the trust. The beneficiary is the person that's entitled to all the benefits or income from the trust. And the trustee is the person that gets to control the trust, right? So the way that we set up these trust structures is that me and my company actually serve as a limited trustee function of the trust. Essentially, only to the capacity to be able to receive any type of legal notifications on behalf of the trust, is the only trustee function that we do. The client actually becomes the beneficiary and the managing trustee. So they're always in control of all of the trust functions, all the assets of the trust, et cetera, and entitled to all the benefits of the trust. And that way, the client's able to have all of the, ownership, right? Meaning all of the benefits of the trust and all of the control of the trust, while we're still able to comply with the legal and statutory requirements of needing to have there be another trustee associated with that trust, but without ever actually being able to have any real control over the trust that would expose me or my company to liability.
My next question is, how does this affect when you pass away and then leaving the items to whoever you decide to be your heirs? And does it do anything with regards to, because I know with like real estate and stock, usually when you pass away, everything gets stepped up to the value on the date of your death. So how does it affect those two areas?
Yeah, I think you're referring to like a step up in basis, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So all the basis still gets stepped up whenever you die. For anything as it normally would, but the DST or the Series LLC, we'll just generally refer to that as, say, the asset holding company. The asset holding company's job is to run in the background, and then you meet with your advisor twice a year to make sure that all of the assets are being moved in and out of that entity correctly, so that way you don't ever drop a ball, right? There's somebody else that's holding accountability for that, because most people don't. What you need to put in place to be able to work on how do things pass to your heirs is what's called an estate plan. And with an estate planning, there's two major documents that you need to govern how assets pass, and then there's two documents you need to cover what happens when you're incapacitated and who can help you when you're incapacitated, meaning in a hospital and, you can't really make decisions, sign documents, etc. And so regarding with the asset passing piece of how do you actually make sure this goes to your heirs, what you create is what's called a living trust. The living trust in turn owns your Delaware statutory trust. And the living trust is actually where it's all designated about who's going to get what and when, right? With the living trust also, all of the assets and the entity structure immediately pass to your heirs. So it passes in an anonymous and protected structure. But what's really important about the living trust is that it avoids probate. So if you just use a will, or if you have nothing at all, this is the worst possible way that you can pass assets to your heirs. Because if you have nothing at all, or you have a will, it goes through a court process called probate, where all of the assets are put onto the public record, and it states not only the assets, but it also states who gets them. So it also effectively creates a target for who just inherited your property. So if you have a will, that's what's going to happen. If you don't have anything in place at all, what happens is not only does everything get disclosed to the public record and you create a target on whoever inherited those assets, the government is also the one that decides who gets the assets. So if you want control over who's going to get the assets, how are they going to get the assets, at what time of their life are they going to get the assets, what can they use those assets for, and you want that to be protected and anonymous when those assets pass over to them, you have to have a living trust in place to be able to accomplish that.
And I think a lot of people get confused with probate and what happens and the pluses and minuses. So thank you for explaining that. I think a lot of times people sit here, they listen to all of this and they go, well, I don't know anyone who's ever really been sued and had any big issues. What are some of the situations that you've seen occur that you've been able to prevent protect your clients from?
So being that this is all I do, right, that I get to see these kinds of things all the time, and I live in this world, right? So if, also major lawsuits and catastrophic events usually aren't things that everybody's going around advertising about. So you might have a skewed perception about what the reality is just based upon the fact of how would you know? Unless you're out there asking a lot of people, or if you're in the trade of helping people in that, because it's a really painful thing, and it usually means people are losing a lot of time and money and cost, etc. So first thing I would do is encourage everybody to say, start asking the people that you know in your life, what lawsuits do they know about, the people that either they've been involved in or things that they've happened to people. And lawsuits are one of the most catastrophic things that can happen to you up there with like divorce, right? And in the world I live in, that this is actually pretty common, how to navigate through these pieces, right? Because not we're setting up the entity structure, and we're also advising people on the litigation aspect of what happens. From my background of being a litigation attorney, we get to see it for clients all over the country. So, I mean, I had a client here in Austin that we had set up a series LLC structure, and then it's for her to do some flips out of. So she had sold a property out of the flip, and there was an email communication back and forth about some of the plumbing in the house that had been replaced. And there was confusion around, well, was all the plumbing in the house replaced, or was it just the plumbing that was underneath the house and what was represented through those emails? Long story short is that there was a leak in the upstairs plumbing while the buyer was on vacation, and caused $75,000 in damages. And they came back and they went and held responsible because of the email communications back and forth, allegedly saying, "Hey, you defrauded me." Well, guess what? Insurance company looked at that and said, "No, we don't cover fraud." Right? And even though you have all these other insurance policies, we don't cover fraud. Embellis policy didn't work, and neither did any of the liability policies that they put in place. All their insurance company policies jumped ship. So what did we have to rely on? Well, they had allegations about where they were defrauded that would have survived all the way to a jury trial. But we weren't going to get that dismissed. The laws on fraud are just an allegation, essentially, that somebody misled you, and it's from the perspective of whoever raised it. So it's like, well, there's nothing I can do to get this dismissed here. So what did I really have to rely on? Well, the only thing I had to rely on was the entity structure itself. We had sold the asset out of a child series of the Series LLC. It was an anonymous asset holding company. And we went to the attorney and said, "Listen, you sold it to this child series. This child series is the one that, took the checks. All the assets out of that child series have since been distributed. And good luck. You're going to end up winning this lawsuit potentially, but good luck trying to collect, because we have it compartmentalized in that sense." So in that way, we were able to get the lawsuit actually dropped completely, just because of the strength of the entity structure that we had set up.
And attorneys are business people. They're not going to sue somebody if they know that they're essentially not going to get paid, because they take a percentage as well, and they don't want to spend all their time and effort and money if they know that they're not going to get their money. And so they're smart enough to walk away, I guess, from clients. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. The attorneys are, a lot of times, they're paid on commission for whatever they win. And, they still have to pay a staff. They still have all this overhead. They're looking for guaranteed wins. So if you make it look like it's really difficult, it's going to be time consuming, it's going to be very costly, the thing's going to drag out for years, having to fight through all these different layers of protection. Well, guess what? Not only is that attorney that's on commission going to be one that's saying, "I'm not taking on this case," but even the attorney that's being paid hourly, the client looks at that and says, "Well, how much am I going to get if I do win this case? How long is it going to take me? And how many hours do I have to keep paying this guy at $350 to $500 an hour to fight this case?" They might be excited in the very beginning when they write that first $5,000 check, but once they've shelled out $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 and they haven't gone to trial yet, much less everything else that they're going to have to go through in terms of actually trying to collect, they get pretty dissuaded pretty quickly.
These are the kind of the behind the scenes things that nobody really talks about unless you're in the business itself.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's really what we come down to, is that we structure out the structures that we do is always with an actual objective in mind, and with the objective always being how do we win, right? When we don't even have to, if we can't win on the law, we can't win on the facts, we're going to win because it's the right business decision for them to walk away.
And that's an important part of it. So how does this work when you're married, and how does it affect divorce at all?
Yeah, so those are typically going to be a family law issue that we consult with our clients in on the front end. So if all the assets are owned, it actually doesn't impact anything, right? Both the married spouses can be named on the entities. If it's going to be in a community property state, then it's just going to still be disregarded, reported on the Schedule E of your personal return, or channeled through tax purposes in a number of different ways that can be advantageous for you for taxes, using usually a combination of S corporations and C corporations, depending upon your income level. If you're in a separate property state, it's the same thing as you normally would, right? You have to file a partnership return and handle the taxes in the normal way. But there's no other particular advantage or disadvantage that comes into being protected that has to do with your marriage. Always going to be able to accomplish the same goals that you would have with your asset protection, along with what your objectives would be, and thinking about like, okay, what happens if I get divorced, et cetera.
And that's important. I mean, you have to look at everything in life in totality and look at all of the different situations. And you brought up something that was interesting and it's just kind of a tip to people, is when you're getting involved in these negotiations or you're having these back and forths and you're dealing with something that's a more sensitive subject, if you're not crystal clear in your emails, that creates an issue. And if you don't want to leave a record of the conversation, pick up the phone. Don't send people emails. Actually talk to them directly and have the conversation out so that you don't have to worry about all of this later. Because had that whole conversation happened on a phone call, they would have had nothing, would they have?
Well, there's also ways that people can record phone calls, with like one-party consent states.
Okay.
To be able to grab evidence even inside the phone calls now. And we run into that issue a lot of times, especially with the use of smartphones. And I think the advice you're giving is actually really prudent. Be cautious with what types of things you're going to put through different media, right? And I think that that's really good advice, and that we should all be prudent with that. I don't know about you, but like I move really fast. Right. And the last thing I'm doing a lot of times is thinking through, even though I'm a litigator, right? When I'm in business mode, I'm thinking like, okay, I need to get people like linked up here. I need to get this deal done. I want to get things driving forward here. I'm not thinking about like the creative, like legal wording of the grammar of that sentence and like what it may or may imply. Right. So my general advice to people is say, yes, of course, always be prudent. Kind of like saying like, yes, always have insurance, but have a backstop to say that even if you screw up, or even if somebody does misunderstand or whatever, that you have that get a jail free card saying that, hey, I operated through a operating company that doesn't own any assets, and I have my assets protected over here. Because of course, you want to operate with best practices of your business. And of course, you want to be doing things prudently, but don't rely on the fact that you're going to be diligent in all those matters, because diligent people, honest people, like get sued every single day. And I've represented those people, and it's really sad because they get really disillusioned about how little it actually matters of how honest you are or how prudent you were all those other times, because all that had to happen was that just this time it went wrong.
And it only takes one wrong step that can wipe you out. And you've kind of shared some examples.
Limit how much you can sue somebody for. I don't think people understand that either. There's no limit in this country to the amount of money you can sue somebody for. It's unlimited liability for anything.
And that's a shame. So if you go through and you do all of the things you're talking about, does insurance then become less needed, or do you reduce your insurance coverages because of that?
Some people do. I know a lot of my clients will actually just get rid of their umbrella policy because of it. I'm a belt and suspenders guy, so I have an umbrella policy, and I have liability policies, and I have all the asset protection in place because my long-term goals are around stability, right? I want stable up and do the right progress. I'm not looking to get rich quick. I'm not looking to do anything fast. What I am looking to do is have really stable gains over time, so that way I never have to go backwards, right? So when it comes to saying, but each person is going to have their own risk tolerance. When it comes to that, I'm pretty risk averse overall. And, I'd say, be well insured, and to the extent that you feel like you want to be, but make sure that you have all the backstops in place.
So at what point in life do people need to start worrying and implementing this? Is there a certain net worth? Is there a certain point in life where you say, hey, it's worth spending the money, it's worth investigating, it's worth doing this?
Yeah, so typically what I look at is and say, once you have over $100,000 in equity in your properties and any of your real estate, your cash, your stocks, or other assets, $100,000 is when it makes sense to say, okay, let's start putting together an anonymous asset holding companies for it, right? And let's start getting together the estate planning pieces, make sure that these assets are going to be used appropriately after you're gone. On the asset holding side, that's just where the inflection point of saying, okay, well, how risky is it? How much money do you have to lose? How long would it take you to recover that much money if you lost it? If it took you 2 weeks to recover $100,000, maybe you're like, I'm not too worried about asset protection. Well, if that took you 2 years to build, well, now asset protection is something you have to have, because what you can't afford to do is lose 2 years of your life. Setting back the clock from your financial freedom 2 years is non-negotiable, right? In terms of, at least for my objectives, which are first accomplishing financial freedom and then looking at overall wealth building so I can live, a more amazing life. I was going to say, so that would be how I think through the asset holding part of it, Rocky. And then I would think that the operating piece of it that I look at is saying that everybody should have an LLC that they operate through from the very beginning of them doing a business, because they need to protect their personal credit score if something goes wrong in that business, right? Because, right, if you lose your credit score or something, you get a judgment filed against you, your credit score goes down, which impacts your ability to actually make money. So that's really where the protection makes sense. It's because I got to protect that credit score. It's an asset that I use to be able to make more money. Now, once you go above making $50,000 a year in your business, that's when you need to start looking at converting that LLC into an S corporation for tax purposes by filing an S corporation tax election when you file your taxes, and taking that income out as part as employee wages and part as dividend income, and saving on self-employment taxes, doing it that way. And when you get above $132,000 a year, that's when you need to start looking at establishing a C corporation to generate fees. Those fees are then generated. They pay out the tax rate at 21%, and that C corporation turns around and loans you the money that's generated in fees from that C corporation, and that lets you get taxed at that 21% rate instead of your 40% or 35% marginal tax rate.
So this all gets complicated over time, and that's why you've got to surround yourself with a team that helps you to do a better job of dealing with all these different issues and loopholes and trying to get through it all, because you've covered a lot. And I think for most people, it's probably the first time that they've even thought of some of these things. And so I know it gets overwhelming. And, as you're a successful person, if you don't surround yourself with a good team of different people, then you'll pay more in the long run than you could save by getting experts on your side to help you make the right choices and the right decisions up front.
Yeah, that's right. All of these things are about being proactive, right? I've never talked to a business owner that ever said man, I'm really happy that I really waited to start getting good people in my life, to help advise me, right? It's almost always the opposite. I waited too long and it cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars and either lost taxes, or that I wasn't proactive on my asset protection. And then I faced a lawsuit. And not only did that, tank part of my business, because now I was distracted with this lawsuit that I was super afraid of, and that was distracting for me. I actually ended up having to pay out a bunch of money that I wouldn't have had to pay out otherwise. What I like to do is think of it with all of our clients that we come in, is saying that there's never too early for us to start forming a relationship and start giving people free information. So that way that they can have an educated decision about where they're at now, what are the things that we'd recommend now, and how would those things grow over the future. So all I'm looking to do is to be able to make connections with people, share information, and just inform them of the scope of options, right? And to be able to share all of the secrets of, just like I did today, of saying here's the different income levels, here's the strategy that uses those income levels, right? As it comes in, that's pretty high level tax advice to just be dropping on a podcast, right? Some people charge thousands of dollars for that kind of information. But my goals aren't around hoarding information. My goals are around sharing all the information with everybody, so that way they can actually make an informed decision of whether that's something they want to do or not. And then we're here to do that for them, or they can do it on their own, or they can use their local tax advisor, right? And I don't need everybody's business. What I need to do is I need to help everybody, and that those people that want me to actually do it for them, we're happy to do it. And then we have a company that's behind that, because my goals are to help and share info. So it's never too early to reach out, get connected, get plugged in, and just start getting the info.
And I think that's important for people to do, is to at least explore things and understand them. And again, it's like you said, this isn't something that's unique to your company. Any attorney can probably do this, but you probably want an attorney who specializes in it. Because if they're not doing it every day, a small mistake can cause the whole thing to kind of implode on itself. So at least make sure you've got an expert that you're working with and doing it with. Is there any other issues that we should have discussed today with regards to this, but I didn't ask you about?
No, I think we had all of them. I mean, we talked about tax, the basic tax strategies. We talked about some of the estate planning strategies. We talked about the asset protection strategies. We talked about how those relate to each other. And just one quick resource for everybody is if you go to the royallegalsolutions.com website and click on the Get a Price, what I've done there is I've actually taken all the things that we talked about here today, and I've fleshed out in an hour and 45-minute video. That's just super, super, super dense information. And it walks through everything in like an excruciating levels of detail. And it also has on there like all types of client testimonials, diagrams, how everything works, et cetera. So I just wanted to underscore that into that to say like that's where you would go. You wanted more intel on exactly how all of these things work, how they all work together, to really nerd out on it. And you can take that information and actually test anybody else that you're talking to in your sphere of how well they actually understand these things. Because my experience has been is that most professionals understand a piece of the puzzle, that one small piece of the puzzle that they focus on, but they don't understand how all the pieces need to put together. And with that 1 hour and 45-minute video, you'll have a super deep knowledge of not just all of the pieces, but how they actually all fit together.
And that's very important. I mean, we talk about that from the coaching standpoint on the podcast. Is your life is not just one piece of the pie. Your life is your health, your wealth, your time, your relationships. And a lot of times, even when you get an expert in one part of your life, they give you advice that messes up other parts of your life. And so you have to make sure that you're getting the right type of advice that's holistic, that looks at everything in totality so that one decision doesn't cause ripple effects in other parts of life, which is always important.
Yeah, that's right.
It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Having high levels of clarity about what I want and helping other people get what they want.
And having clarity, I think, is one of the most important things, because when you know where you're going, it's so much easier to get there. Was there something that helped you to get clarity?
Yeah, it took years of really deep spiritual work to get clarity. And not even just that, it's about like, what are the practices? Like clarity can actually be manufactured. Knowledge and wisdom can actually be manufactured, right? There's really repeatable processes that you can follow to be able to get there. And I'd encourage everybody to start looking in that direction, that if you're not clear about exactly what it is that you want and all the major facets of your life, then the first thing you need to do is to be able to develop those types of spiritual practices, to be able to, I don't know the right word for it. Spiritual always sounds so woo-woo. I always feel like a hippie when I say that. But it's really just about like, the way I talk about spirituality is really just a way of like a deeper knowledge of self. And how do you get that?
And I very much concur with you on that. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
There's no end. There's no getting there. Like there's no point at which like you get there and then it's like, it's all whatever. Like whatever you think you're waiting for, and then it's over that next hill, and it just never exists. And it's always the real challenge and the beauty of life is in the moment. It's in the moment of what am I experiencing right now, that there is no arrival.
Yeah, if you're not enjoying the journey, then you're going to be in trouble.
Change the journey.
Change the journey.
Then what the hell? You're never going to get to the destination that you're actually going to care about.
And that's very true, right? It's if you're waiting for if only then, it doesn't work like that. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Find out what makes you feel on fire inside and just go for it 1,000,000%.
Where can people find you and connect?
Yeah, the best place to be able to find me is actually at the royallegalsolutions.com website. It's going to be the best place that has all of the resources for everything that we teach about. The best resource that we have on there that just kind of gets you from zero to light speed real fast is that when you go to the homepage at royallegalsolutions.com and you click on the Get a Price link at the very top of that page, it's going to take you to a page that has about an hour and 45-minute video, walks through all of the secrets of the asset protection, the tax, operating companies, everything that you're going to need to know about what do you need to put in place now. How do these things stack on top of each other to see where do you need to grow in the future? It's also going to have all the client testimonials, diagrams, other resources to look at, all right there just on one page. I mean, it's literally probably worth at least $5,000 to $10,000, I would say, in terms of collective wisdom. I just give it away for everybody for free. All you have to do is just go to the royallegalsolutions.com website and click on Get a Price, and then just buckle up and get ready for an information feast, because it is dense and it is really, really powerful.
Well, and thank you for sharing that. I know I'm going to go check it out so I can learn a little bit more, and I encourage the audience to do so as well. I will put a link in the show notes to make it easy for you to find the webpage. Thank you so much for joining us today, Scott.
Thank you, Rocky. Have a great day.
Well, that's got me thinking about all kinds of asset protection and what I need to do. I would encourage you, if you don't have an asset protection strategy in place, to start investigating one. This week's action step: what risks are you facing? Have you ever thought about that? It's a good idea to look around at all parts of your life and see what the risks are so you can mitigate them. If you know anything about the strategies that Scott talked about, I'd love to hear from you. I'm working through a plan for myself. These programs get very complicated, and I find when you need to deal with complicated decisions, it's best to get expert help. So, what's preventing you from moving forward, and who are you putting on your team to help build the life you deserve? Taking no action creates a far worse outcome in life than trying something and failing. Can I help you achieve your goals through coaching and accountability? Just email me. We can start with a short chat to see if we're a good fit for coaching. For many people, one session allows them a giant leap forward towards their dreams. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to grab a few minutes on my calendar, or email me, Rocky@RicherSoul. I love to hear how you're doing and how the information I've shared has helped. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.